Greetings and good Monday morning, the 6th of June, 2022, third decade of the 21st century. I always open with that because, me personally, I'm always amazed at where people had predicted us to be, what they predicted us to be doing, talking about, etc., as compared to where we are and what we're actually talking about and the things that we're currently debating. I also like to open it up with a bit of a preamble in the event you're new to my channel, your first time, why did I start this channel? Um, what I will say on that note is this. When I started this channel, it was during COVID. I was laid off from COVID. I won't get into the details there, but essentially, I I needed a platform to sort of purge my angst. I needed a platform to kind of vent my frustrations. And I must have done, I really don't know the number, but more than 10 but less than 20 videos before I finally had the courage to post a singular video to the internet. Because in doing all of that, my original intent was to keep up with the Joneses, the Steven Crowders, the Ben Shapiros, you know, so on and so forth, where I would draw a hard line in the sand and it's like, you versus me. Are you ready? Let's go. And I don't know why or how, but it all of a sudden hit me. Well, I think I'm a good person. And this is how I think and feel. I feel like I'm a productive member of society. Under normal circumstances, prior to COVID, I go to work, I pay my taxes, I vote, I think I'm a good person. I just happen to feel this way. Well, equally and opposite, why can't people who think differently represent all those things? Why can't people who go to work, vote, pay their taxes, productive members of society, why can't they feel differently? And then I kept thinking about that. And I would talk to my therapist, and I was like, well, then you have the concept of single issue voters, people who could care less about 99% of everything else. There's just one thing that they care about, and therefore they only vote for people that support that one thing because that one thing is extremely important to them. Everything else they could care less about. It just, if it doesn't necessarily affect them, then they don't care. Uh, so it finally hit me that, why are we drawing such hard lines in the sand? Why are we taking up arms and basically joining camp red or camp blue, camp Republican, camp Democrat, camp left, camp right, whatever the case may be? And to this day, it's 2022. It's been identified, it's it's been labeled, it's been criticized, and what utterly fascinates me is the media is just like, yep, 100%. We are biased. 100%. We're going to own it. We are only going to support stories and facts that ultimately contribute to our preconceived conclusions. I mean, way back in the day, I just took up Yahoo as a platform for email. And Yahoo has like a whole page and everything. You can't even log into Yahoo without some extreme progressive, extreme liberal, extreme leftist, hateful ideology. And it just blows my mind. And what further blows my mind is that if it's stuff that you agree with, how many people are not rational enough to be like, oh my God, that is very divisive. Oh my God, I don't know that I 100% agree. That there's people that are just like, yep, that's all good stuff. That's 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 not just good, it's the best. We need more of that. And it's like, really? You you want to continuously divide this country? You know, empires are not killed from the outside. Empires are killed from within. I'd hate to think of ourselves as an empire because empires usually have emperors, but I digress. So I always try to approach every video with the mindset that I respect and understand that different people can think and feel differently for their own reasons. But if we can respect one another, in spite of the fact that we may disagree, that we can be better than what the news agencies, the legacy media wants us to be. All right. They want to divide us. I don't know why. They have found some value in it. They have, I don't know. They've got a long term goal. I don't know. Um, there are topics, however, I've learned from my very own personal experience on this channel that are very divisive. Am I in the right lighting? Sorry about that. Uh, and that people can be very, very emotionally attached. And it literally creates the mindset of like Anakin Skywalker when he became Darth Vader. If you're not with me, then you are my enemy. And I quickly learned that. And in an ironic twist, um, for a very brief moment in time, my channel was receiving a little bit of popularity. I was receiving more viewers and I was receiving more comments. And I always love to read the comments out loud, react, and respond. Uh, it's something just unique that I did. And the vitriol and the negativity and the name calling and the extreme leftist just rhetoric, which was very hateful. And I always tried to maintain the disposition that I'm not going to try and hate you, even though my knee jerk reaction is scorched earth, Clausewitz, total war. All right. I was just blown away at the hard stance some people took. Um, and what was even more disappointing internally was at the risk of alienating them, I basically patronized myself because I didn't want to lose not so much the viewers, because at this it goes hand in hand. If you're commenting because you're watching. I could care less about how many people are watching. I could care less as to how popular my channel was. I was so, what's the word I'm looking for? I was so concerned about maintaining the conversation that I wasn't taking into consideration my own self, which was, I was fighting everything about me. I was fighting every one of my instincts. I was denying myself under the mere hopes that I could make the greatest effort to maintain some sort of positivity, some sort of kindness, courtesy, and decorum. And it just, whether it was the topic, whether it was the individuals, or a combination of both, um, just some really, really hateful things. And it just, what it tells me is these are extremely weak people. So just let them go. Which brings me to this topic. So I've been going on for about 9 minutes now. The events in Uvalde, Texas, the mass shooting. I am pro Second Amendment. I am a firearm enthusiast and I am a firearms owner. I am not pro mass shooting. I am not pro murder. I am also not pro the murder of children. I have unfortunately suffered the extraordinary event of losing a child. I'm what I would consider to be a less than extraordinary person, and losing a child is an extraordinary event. And my wife and I had to suffer through that. I'm not comparing the two. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but losing a child of that age, I understand what that loss feels like. That being said, the arguments and the comments that result, um, I find frustrating. And if I'm being completely honest, they not only frustrate me, they anger me and they annoy me, especially when they come from celebrities, especially celebrities who have zero problems whatsoever, especially in the realm of actors and actresses. All right. Sports figures, whatever. You're not known for anything other than playing your sport. But actors and actresses who are very popular, actors and actresses who also will portray characters that use firearms in the storytelling. Um, I don't know why, you know, I don't care to defend it. I don't care to explain it other than I just find it distasteful. I find it disingenuous, and I find it extremely hypocritical for these people to come out and say anything against firearms, and yet at the same time they have zero problem whatsoever using firearms on camera. Put your money where your mouth is. That's all. But I digress. I've thought about this long and hard, and this is at least, I don't know how many times I've tried to make this video, and I'm not even sure if this will get put on the air, YouTube, whatever. The classical argument I always hear is the tool versus the person wielding it. There's no shortage of people that are pro gun that are taking to social media or other platforms and stating, the gun is no more responsible than a shovel is for digging a ditch. Or they'll start listing off statistics of illegal guns used to commit murder, or the number of baseball bats, the number of knives, the number of vehicles, this, that, or the other. And, as if to compare and contrast things that are not currently outlawed, things that are never even in consideration to be outlawed versus guns. And then they talk about societies that have allowed their governments to disarm the citizens and the historical examples of that. In that context, I agree. That is the one area I will draw a hard line in the sand in. The only reason I'm pro Second Amendment is, in my opinion, Jesus, go away. In my opinion, the concept of the Second Amendment is this: the citizens are supposed to have the capacity and the capability to protect themselves from the elected officials in the event the elected officials either A, become too powerful, B, become corrupt, or C, try to act against the citizenry. I believe the founding fathers had watched what took place elsewhere in the countries that they were leaving and fleeing from, and were like, absolutely not. We should have the capacity to defend ourselves against ourselves. We reluctantly created a form of government, and we reluctantly elected people to represent us. If you actually go back in history and read up on this, a lot of our elected leaders did not want to be in charge, because they believed in the concept that power corrupts absolutely. So they reluctantly allowed themselves to take up leadership positions, all the while maintaining the disposition that the citizens have the capacity to defend themselves against the government should elected leaders try to turn the government against the citizens. And what a lot of people don't seem to recognize is that in that in that in the fidelity of that, the citizens are absolutely supposed to be allowed to own everything the military can own. All right? missile launchers, grenades, grenade launchers, tanks, fighter jets, you name it. Because these are all produced by private companies. The military does not produce these. There's not like the Marine Corps doesn't have a factory and the Army doesn't have a factory. All right, these are all created and built by privately owned companies. So the citizens have the ability to purchase them. However, elected officials have created laws that make it extremely difficult. There is a process you have to go through in order to purchase weapons, to include pistols, rifles, you name it. When it comes to weapons of war, we are absolutely allowed to own them. It's just who has the money to purchase a fighter jet. Not only that, the jet fuel, the munitions to arm it, like the Sidewinder missiles, the JDAMs, the air-to-air missiles, so on and so forth. These things are oftentimes extremely expensive, and the average citizen cannot necessarily afford to buy one, like the average citizen could necessarily afford to buy a rifle and ammunition. But theoretically, yes, we are supposed to be able to own these things. Just there's paperwork, laws, regulations in place that make it very difficult, and then you add the price tag, and typically speaking, no, the average citizen does not own these types of weapons. But in keeping with the fidelity of the Second Amendment, we're absolutely allowed to, in order to defend ourselves against a corrupt government. And I think I've gone on and on about that. So here's my olive branch. We don't blame the vehicle for all the deaths caused by traffic accidents, whether driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol, texting and driving, distracted driving, uh, negligent driving. We don't blame the vehicle. We blame the person. Other instruments have been used to commit murder, and yet we don't blame the instrument, we blame the person. The firearm is the only tool where we blame the tool instead of the person. We don't blame the person nearly as much as we blame the tool. So here's what I'll say on that. There's no way around it. The firearm was created with one purpose in mind, and that was to fire a projectile towards an object. Whether it was hunting for food or specifically for the purpose of killing another human being, firearms were designed and developed with one concept in mind. And perhaps it's in that vein that I at least can understand where some people may come from. Unfortunately, and I try very hard to resist from getting caught up in this, some of the arguments that people make, some of the language that people use is woefully ignorant because they're coming from a place of ignorance. They're coming from a place of not understanding. They are very emotional. They are what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say hyped up, but they're coming from a place of high emotional, an elevated state of emotional character where some of the things they say are just, for those of us that are in the firearms enthusiast community, they're just woefully ignorant. I just, and I just find it very, very divisive. And I find it even more divisive that people would say things that, you know, firearms enthusiasts, people that are pro Second Amendment, are all lumped into this same category. We're all a bunch of redneck, hillbilly, backwoods people who have more fingers than teeth and uh, have an excessive infatuation with Jesus and all of this crazy, nonsensical stuff. When there may be a small fringe population that represents, the vast majority of us basically just want to be able to protect ourselves and our families. Um, and there's so much more that can come out of that. And if anybody leaves a comment, perhaps I can elaborate a little bit more. We'll see. Um, and I apologize if it's taken me this long to make this video. I'm not even sure if I'll publish it because it's just the hardest thing for me, and I don't know if anybody's been able to witness it, is I'm trying very hard not to do that whole hard line in the sand, you versus me, because I am very passionate towards firearms ownership, the Second Amendment, and the ability to own firearms for the sole purpose of defending myself against a tyrannical government, especially a government that claims that the current president was elected by over 80 million votes. Over 80 million registered voters voted for the current president. The only thing I'm willing to accept is that due to the polarizing nature of where we're at today in society, people didn't vote for him as much as they voted against Trump, because I didn't vote for Trump nearly as much as I voted against Hillary and as much as I voted against Biden. But that's the world we live in. So I probably could say more, but I try to keep these right at around 20 minutes, and it's already been 22 minutes. Stace, I owe you a response. I actually made a video responding to your comments. I just haven't posted it yet. So I'll probably redo that video and respond to your comments because, if nothing else, Stace, thank you so much for providing me with something to talk about other than this stuff. So here's the deal. I don't care if you like. I don't care if you subscribe. I don't care if you hit the notification bell. I'm only really interested in hearing comments so that we can attempt to open up the lines of communication and have discord back and forth. Ultimately, I would prefer a sense of decorum, a sense of politeness, so to speak. Uh, but depending on who's on this, if that's just not who you are, well, then you do you. Just respect and be prepared for me to respond in kind. So if you're a mouth breathing, libtard activist jackass, I might treat you as such. So either way, if you do leave a comment, in spite of what kind of comment it is, I appreciate it, and you're awesome.